1971, Sherry Miller and Pam Jackson, who were 17 years old at the time, disappeared while heading to a party in rural Vermillion. It took over 40 years for law enforcement to determine what happened to them. Now, almost 10 years after that, all the details are being released in a Minnesota journalist best-selling new book. KTIV's Nick Reese tells us more.
It's a case that has haunted the Vermillion community for over 50 years. Back in 1971, two girls went missing while on their way to a party, and now the community is finally getting answers.
This was just Vermillion's mystery.
Sherry Miller and Pam Jackson were 17 years old when they drove into rural Clay County to go to a keg party. However, suspicion arose when they never returned home the next day. It was initially assumed the girls ran away, and with no real evidence, that theory stood for nearly 20 years until two local newspaper articles reignited law enforcement's curiosity about the case. This led to them charging David Lycan with the suspected murders. He was a convicted felon who was the same age as the girls and had a farm near the site of the party. After false statements from Lycan's sister and cellmate, he was assumed as the killer, and his family's farm was decimated multiple times by law enforcement in an effort to find any evidence. It wasn't until 2008 when Lycan's charges were dropped. In fact, it turns out the girls died in an accident after their car and remains were found in a creek about 100 yards from the driveway of the party in 2013. A local man who was inspired by a newspaper article about a similar case in Oklahoma discovered the car in the creek and notified law enforcement, who recovered the girls' remains. Despite the cause being an accident, the community was still looking for answers on why it all took so long until this year. Lou Ragoose, who currently works as a reporter at KARE 11 News in Minneapolis, covered the disappearance when it was a cold case while working in Sioux Falls.
A period of time went by where you didn't think it was going to be solved, but then once we learned what happened to Pam and Sherry, I wanted to dig in further to find out exactly all the details along the way.
Over a 5-year period, while working full-time as a reporter and managing a family with young children, Ragoose spoke with the families of Pam, Sherry, and Lycan, as well as Vermillion officers and community members, gathering details on the case. And at the end of February, he released his book, Vanished in Vermillion, sharing all of his findings. On Saturday, he visited the Vermillion Public Library to share the details with the Vermillion community and answer all of their questions.
Coming back here and working on this story and giving answers to an entire community really helped me feel like I formed a bond with Vermillion in particular. And so it just feels really good to be a part of something like that.
Through the process, Ragoose was able to build a close relationship with the families of Pam, Sherry, and Lycan, and they were in attendance at the presentation. In fact, they became so close that Pam's sister and husband came to Ragoose's wedding in Sioux City.
That's a pretty deep relationship when you're inviting somebody you worked on a story with to your wedding.
He says he's been glad to help give closure both to the girls' families.
Even though they know how Pam and Sherry died, they didn't have answers to why they were told all these other things along the way. And so one of the best compliments I got was from Pam's sister, Kay, who said that reading the book gave her more closure than law enforcement did or even the memorial service they had for Pam did.
And Lycan's family.
Getting redemption and letting people know that they really had nothing to do with this is very important for them, and I feel good that I've been able to provide that to them.
As for the community, Ragoose hopes the book will help push them to make a change.
Try to ask more questions themselves on these cases, push lawmakers to create better laws for access to police reports and stuff like that, so that stuff like this doesn't happen anymore, where a case goes unsolved and mistakes are made and nobody even knows what the mistakes were.
In Vermillion, South Dakota, Nick Reese, KTIV News 4.
Ragoose's book, Vanished in Vermillion, is currently sold out in stores, but you can check it out right now on Amazon.